Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon. With me as always is Caleb, and we are starting this year's October horror movie marathon. In past years we did Friday the 13th series. Last year we did the Halloween series, and we thought he'd switch it up a little bit this year and do a collection of old school horror. And it can't really get any older than what we're starting with. And that is 1922's Nosferatu. I believe you told me before that you've seen this movie.
I did not remember a lot of it. I watched it. I can tell you exactly when, because I was in college in Florida, so that would have been 2007. Wait, 2005, six. Yes, 2006, the fall of 2006. I was in college in Florida, and I was taking a writing class and art school, and I hated my life. Because I was not there to write and do grammar crap, but we had to do, I can't remember even what the project was about, but we could pick a topic. And so essentially I kind of did some kind of a comparison between like silent films and non talkies or
Yeah,
whatever they
and talkies.
started calling them. So I watched that for it, and that was my only reference. So yeah, it was like watching it new again.
Rock. Yeah, this is the first time I've ever seen this movie. I think this might be the first time I've seen a silent movie all the way through.
Okay.
Because I've seen bits and pieces of like, old Charlie Chaplin stuff and things like that. I've seen bits and pieces of the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari,
Okay.
which is another horror movie which I believe predates this only
Okay.
by like a year or so. And
Interesting.
it's a really interesting movie. Like all the set pieces are like very artistic,
Okay.
very like abstract. It's kind of interesting. You might find it interesting with your art background too.
hmm
But
yeah, I've only seen one other silent movie. I saw The Artist, that movie that came out a few years ago, but I'm not counting that because I mean, technically at the end, it's not a silent movie. But of original silent movies, I did see Metropolis.
oh
So that's a really good one. I think you would appreciate that one more. But,
yeah, it's always been on my list to watch, but I never got around to it.
um,
But yeah, let's waste no time and jump right into it.
rock.
So like I said, Nosferatu from 1922. It is directed by F.W. Murnau. The plot is vampire Count Orlok expresses interest in a new residence and real estate agent Hutter's wife. That's kind of funny when you think about it. We got a vampire that's focusing on getting a new house and wanting to take over a guy's wife.
Because the only reason he'd have an opportunity to attack his wife would be by buying the house across the street.
Right. I must buy this house so I'm closer to her and stare out my window at her. I almost wish they would have had a scene where there was like rain hitting the window and he's looking out and just like touching it.
But there were no
Hello.
windows. It's me.
Oh man. So the cast for this, we got Max Schreck as Count Orlok. And here's a name for you. I mean, it's not German at all. Gustav von Wagenheim as Hutter and Greta Schroeder as Ellen. There's
My
more characters in this, but these are like the three main characters.
Oh yeah, for sure. My guess is Gustav von V-
Vagan.
Wagenheim. My mom would always make it pronounce that much with the heavier uh verbiage, or however you want to say that pronunciation.
Yeah, the W tends to have a V sound in German.
Yeah.
Mo
So
Wagner.
well, one thing that you can say for sure across the board is that everyone was pretty expressive because they had to be.
Yeah.
because this is a definitely a different style of film. So they had to do that. It was these for anybody who maybe has not seen a silent movie. Um, it's very similar to a play, very theatrical um, because of it being silent and then also not the greatest film quality.
Yeah.
They always overdid the acting and the expressions and everything just to help emphasize things even more.
Yeah. And you see that a lot too with early talkies.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Universal monster movies are like that. You get like people that are incredibly overacting because they're still getting used to being able to use their voice to express themselves and not they don't have to like physically express themselves all the time.
I'm sorry.
I believe Dracula has someone that completely and utterly overacts in it.
I'm sorry. Every time I think of overacting, though, I just think of that witch lady from Troll 2.
You know who I think of?
Oh,
Another movie we watched, The Crazy Ant from Sleepaway Camp.
oh my gosh. Yeah. That's a good one.
great, great stage actor slash worst actress ever. Can't decide still. Oh gosh. I guess we could talk about some things that worked in this. You mentioned that like everybody's kind of giving it their all, and you know um the emotions like in the music and like the actors physically emoting were things
Hmm.
that were like really great and on point. The atmosphere as a whole, the lighting of things, and, you know, like kind of goes along too with the film quality being such a it's 100-year-old movie.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh gosh. Yeah. No, even specifically this year, I didn't even connect the dots on that.
yeah, I've got that in trivia,
Oh, nice.
my abbreviated trivia. Um, another thing too is Count Orlok himself is just genuinely creepy.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Like
The
one
look of
thing,
him, his movements, and yeah, how do he facial expressions and things like that.
one thing that I would kind of love to have a conversation around sometime, but I don't think there's enough time to do it in these short episodes, or maybe to do a full episode on it necessarily. But it's just like I always thought, because I saw some of the older horror movies that we're going to be talking about this month when I was younger, a young kid.
Hmm.
And I often thought that some of them were creepier than modern horror movies. Now, of course, modern horror movies for me back then were the 90s, not like the gore overload that you see a lot of times now. Not all
Yeah.
of them, but a
Hmm.
lot. Um, just because as you were just talking about the atmosphere, the old film, and there you weren't used to cliches in them. There wasn't like, oh, you know somebody's about to die, you know the bad guy's about to come out. Like there was a lot of unexpected things in these older movies. And also it's just black and white can sometimes make it more creepy. And I don't know, it's just different. And so I definitely agree with you that Orlok was totally creepy, and like they did a good job with it. Even that the real estate guy was creepy too,
Yeah,
because he was
Hutter.
like, yeah, well, not Hutter, his boss, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Because his like teeth were rotting, his hair was crazy, and they did the excessive makeup on him too, and so he looked crazy and as
Yeah,
well.
he
So
almost looked like Count Orlok mixed with like Ebenezer Scrooge.
yes, absolutely. I actually thought because I was kind of looking at it and I was just like, wait, does this guy wind up turning into him at the early parts? And because I couldn't remember it well enough.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. Obviously he does not, but
Um, so yeah, I think that was one of the best some of the best elements right there. I mean, the atmosphere, the music, Orlok. I think those are probably the top three things from this movie. So,
Yeah, I would say so too. And then you got some of the more like iconic parts of this. There's a scene where Orlok's walking up the stairs and you just see his shadow with like his really long fingers
hmm
um up against the wall. I mean, that's been parodied and there's been so many like homages for that. There's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I can't remember if it's the first one or not. Uh, where you can see like the shadow of Freddy Krueger walking up with like this glove with the
hmm
knives on it, and it's just a very like subtle homage there. Another one too is where you're when they're on the boat and
hmm
Count Orlok's like standing there by the door, and right before he attacks the captain of the ship.
oh yeah.
That's one of the images you see from this movie quite a bit. One that really stood out to me is like genuinely just unnerving was when Hutter is in the castle and he opens up that small door and he looks out and Count Orlok is just like standing there off in a distance just staring at him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like really that one got me and I'm like, that is creepy.
hmm I, probably the one that stuck to me the most um is where he rises out of the coffin,
Yeah.
because yeah, thinking about it back then, I have no scope, to be completely honest, on like how many films had come out by this time and things like that. But I can't imagine that there are a lot that have as much going on as this one does with
Mm-hmm.
that trying to fake the rising out of the coffin like they did with him, what they did with the trying to do the spiritual magic of the horse cart getting loaded by itself,
Mm-hmm.
and also where they would have Count Orlok appear and disappear sometimes, which essentially was just like fading film over top of itself, filming the space empty and then imposing him on top of it. So just those different elements probably weren't done a ton back then. And so I can only imagine that people thought they were super awesome. But out of all of those, the one rising out of the coffin I thought was um, kind of the most memorable.
Yeah, and I was actually very impressed with just like the random like slowly appearing things, and it's just that they were able to figure that out when you know movies were such a new thing at the time
hmm
that they were able to figure that out. And it's dated now, but um it's still effective, and it just with the oldness of the movie and everything, it's still very effective.
Yeah.
One thing I did find weird with this was maybe that was just an aversion we saw, but the color overlays on stuff,
hmm
like a lot of it was, yellow tinted, which, kind of makes sense. It'd be more like the sepia tone. But then like other times is blue.
I think that was the attempt at trying to distinguish day from night,
Oh, okay.
but I couldn't tell every time because they were obviously filming with good light the whole time
Yeah.
because they had to. And so I couldn't tell, like, okay, is this the attempt at day and night, or is this just something that went weird with the film?
Mm-hmm.
So that, but my guess was it was trying to do a day and night difference. I should probably try to look that up sometime.
Yeah, and one of the other beefs I had with it is some of that font is hard to read.
Oh yeah.
And that's just me as a graphic designer.
Well, no, even just in general, the A's were terrible.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like there's a couple times where I had to like, is that what it's supposed to say? And yeah, by the time I finished reading it, like they were moving on to something else.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll just move on. Um, what I kept thinking about during this for some reason is Family Guy, the Peter, what really grinds my gears? Where he's like, people in the 1800s, he's like, it's called a car, people. It's much faster than riding a horse. And I kept thinking of this. I'm like, it's called talking, people. It's much easier than reading a movie. But yeah, maybe silent movies just aren't for me because I had a hard time getting through this. Like, I appreciated it for what it was,
Hmm.
what it did for cinema, but it was just almost like too much work for me. And, older movies tend to be slower paced.
Yeah, which
So,
this
yeah.
definitely was.
Oh, yeah. Like, I felt it could have been wrapped up in an hour and it was an hour and a half because there was even like some scenes that they did twice. Um, when they show on the screen when he was writing a letter to his wife
Hmm.
and then she reads it and they show like the same slide.
Yeah.
I'm like, we know what he wrote. He just wrote it.
Oh, it was 20 minutes ago. I forgot what he said.
Yeah, and apparently he had to travel quite a ways
Oh my gosh.
because
Yeah.
he was on a pirate ship.
No, yeah, that was one thing that was absolutely poorly conveyed in this movie, which I mean, okay, we're getting kind of nitpicky and critical over a movie 100 years ago, but
Yeah.
that was one thing where he traveled there and his trip there seemed like it lasted like they maybe had footage for 5 to 10 minutes. And well, not even 5 to 10, like 5 minutes.
Hmm.
But then on the trip back, there were numerous scenes and it probably took a half an hour of the movie, I think,
Yeah.
for the return trip, and they never even showed Hutter on his way there taking a boat. But apparently, that's the common way to travel because he said he was taking a more direct, short route by riding his horse on the way back. But then Count Orlok went by boat. So
Yeah. Yeah, I wondered that too. I was very confused and I was like, maybe I missed something when I looked away. Um that's the thing too with silent movies is like it's something you got to give like 100% of your attention to,
mhm.
which a lot of times when we watch these movies, they're either ones I've seen before or I kind of have them on while I'm working during the day so I can catch it here and there.
Yeah.
And I might watch it a couple times so I make sure I get everything. But yeah, silent movie I can't really do that with.
Mm-hmm. Because all you do is hear the music.
Yeah. Um so maybe I lost some stuff within the movie, but I don't know, I was kind of I feel bad saying it. I was kind of happy when it was done.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I said, I appreciate it and I know that it's a good movie and it was well made, but it's just maybe silent movies just aren't my thing.
Yeah, no, I mean it's tough because I mean we have grown accustomed to films of today and what we've seen for the past like 30 years of our lives. And so that's what our standard is. And this is, 100 years ago.
Mhm.
So it's not surprising that it's tough. And that's not to say that it wasn't good, especially that it wasn't a great film for its time. It's just I think it'd be different if you and I or maybe just a group of us were together and kind of watching it and being able to discuss it while watching it, because then that kind of makes it a little bit more engaging.
Mhm.
But yeah, watching it by yourself, because I mean I did the same thing too, and gosh, honestly, it was like 2 in the morning for me. It dragged, and it was a movie that had its slow parts. So for say all sakes and purposes, not like a home run. Back then, it would be really cool to know what it would be like to have seen a movie of this caliber back then compared to everything else.
Yeah, to really have like something to base it on,
Yeah, I mean you
compare
could
it
watch
to.
other movies from the time, but it's still not gonna do it for you because you've already been however you want to say it, like contaminated with entertainment from today, that you wouldn't be able to give it a fair comparison, even if you watched a bunch of movies from that time. But
Hmm.
a couple other nitpicky things to kind of get into before we you share your facts and everything. I was really confused. Like, did Count Orlok kill people? Because nobody died, did they?
Didn't the sea captain die? Like the ship captain?
Oh yes, the ship captain did,
Well,
and
and they
then
had a thing too that popped up that said the news was talking about young men dying, and they thought it was a disease, and they had 2 marks on their neck.
yeah,
But
but
then at the
like
same time, like Hutter was talking about how he must have had 2 mosquito bites next to each other.
yeah, like Hutter didn't die. Some people died, and so I thought the other people were dying because of the rats. But I don't know. It was really kind of confusing because I thought like Hutter was gonna die because he got bit, but then there was he was the one who was giving the account at the end, wasn't he? So it's just like,
Yeah.
so did he never die? So that was a
Mm.
little confusing on just being like, okay, what causes you to die? What doesn't? Was it maybe just some kind of a thing where everybody uh who gets it doesn't automatically die? I
Right. Another question I had was, could Hutter and Ellen communicate telepathically?
don't know.
Because it seems like she knew everything that was going on,
Yeah,
and
that
she wasn't
was
even there.
hmm
And they've already established that they are a ways apart.
yeah, that was very unusual. I don't think they could. I think they were just trying to drive more of the emotion,
Yeah.
but that I do completely understand how you got there. So,
Yeah, that was more of like a dumb question. Like I knew they weren't, but it just seemed like they were within the movie.
well, it did seem like there was some kind of something weird connection. Well, because she also did the whole like hallucination thing or whatever,
Hmm.
like walking or sleepwalking. So they were trying to drive something weird with that. What I thought was strange was when Hutter originally left, she dressed in all black
Hmm.
and basically acted like it was a funeral because he was just going on a business trip.
Needy much?
High maintenance.
Right.
High maintenance for 1922.
Oh gosh, I think this movie was supposed to be based in the 1830s. So, yeah, maybe the women are just even more high maintenance back then. They've already shown in this movie that they're high maintenance in the 20s, I guess.
Oh man. One thing that was funny that I just there were two things that were funny that I just had to make sure to mention though, is how they when Hutter stopped at that inn or wherever,
Hmm.
and the people were talking about you can't go any further if you go into the woods, there's a werewolf,
Yeah.
and then they showed a picture of a hyena. I was like, okay, I guess. I mean,
They're they must
I
have figured, like, how's anybody going to be able to fact check us?
right. I mean, hyenas aren't wolves anyways, but okay.
Yeah, just get a picture of a wild dog.
Then the other thing, my favorite character in this, without a doubt, was I don't know if he was like the police officer or the jail keeper.
Yeah, a constable maybe.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about though?
Yeah,
Dude, like I don't know what it was, but he had the same expression on his face, and he had like one bug eye open.
like Popeye.
Yeah. So
Uh,
I think kind of that's most of everything on my notes.
yeah, that's pretty much all I got too. You want me to throw out some trivia?
Rock.
trying to limit myself this year so I don't go too crazy with trivia. So, the first thing I got is the movie was actually banned in Sweden due to excessive horror, and the ban wasn't finally lifted until 1972.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the film was loosely based on Bram Stoker book, Dracula,
Mm-hmm.
but the characters' names were changed in an attempt to prevent legal action. The subtitles were translated into French. And then when the film went to the U.S., into English, but with Stoker's character names used.
Whoops.
So in the meantime, the original prints were destroyed because of the legal action. So the original subtitles were lost. The American version went to the UK and then translated into German for the release there. When restorers were about to make a definitive version, they were looking through a number of archives. Unfortunately, all the prints they had found had changed subtitles. So they gave up on being able to recover the originals. They later heard there was a good print in the East German archive. When they got there, they found out that the print had been loaned out. The restorers were then offered to have a look at another print from the archive, which wasn't considered as good as the other one. When they observed the print, they discovered it had the original subtitles and had been sitting there for half a century and nobody had noticed.
Jeez.
Yeah, so it's like discovering gold.
Right.
There's a lot of movies like from that era that are like either completely lost or lost for a long time and then rediscovered.
Hmm.
I think there's one called London After Midnight that was like that, and then there's like a werewolf movie from like around this time that's just completely lost.
Threat level midnight.
Maybe. Oh gosh, that'd be hilarious. Um, this movie celebrated its 100th birthday this year on March 4th.
Oh, hey. Nice.
Yeah. So I always try to get the budget and the box office. Well, I don't know what the budget is, but I know that it made $19,000
Ooh.
worldwide,
Oh, snap.
which in 1922 is probably a fair amount.
Yeah, that's probably like 100,000 ticket sales.
Probably.
Or actually, honestly, it's probably more than that. But
Yeah. Right. So that is all I have for the trivia. Let's get into grades. So I got IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes like usual. What do you think those are?
I feel like this is pretty high. So, not too high. 7.5.
7.9.
Okay, rock. Rotten Tomatoes. Gosh, I don't know.
I'll say it's very high.
Oh, okay. I think I usually do critic first. Let's do 83%.
97.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
And audience then 95.
87.
Okay.
Yeah, not really surprised because I know this movie is considered one of the greatest movies of all time. I mean, especially for when it came out, what it was able to do, and the effect that it had on cinema alone, not just horror cinema.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really surprise me that it's that high. You want to give your grade first, and then I'll give mine.
Rock.
Okay.
So, I mean, you gotta take it for what it is. I mean, it's not going to be easy. This isn't a comparison, and it's not really a fair thing to compare a horror movie from 1922 to like Halloween or Friday the 13th. So, as for it, what it is, I don't have a lot of other things to compare it to. Like I said, really, the only other silent movie is Metropolis.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good movie. I'm trying to take it into account for what I know of the time. It seemed like we talked about some of the visual tricks that they were doing that were really successful for the film. It seemed like the actors were all really good for the silent film era.
Hmm.
So I'm going to give it a 4.5.
Okay.
Because like I said, I mean, it's kind of tough because I really don't have any other ones to compare it to. Like, I don't have any old like 1920, 1930 horror movies that I can really say that I could compare it to. But I just feel like for what they had and what they did, that it was top quality for the time.
Right. Yeah, and I said, watching this movie, I had a hard time getting through it. I do appreciate it for what it is and, what it meant to movies in general. Um, I, my enjoyment or maybe lack thereof at times, hinders my grade a little bit, but I do realize that it is like a milestone movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a hard time grading it.
Yeah.
Even when you were giving your grade, like I changed mine a little bit. I originally had a 3,
Okay.
but I feel like it deserves more than that just for, what it is. So I had to give it a 3.5.
Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
I
tough to
get that.
grade that one because I had a hard time getting through it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, like I said, maybe just silent movies just aren't for me.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, well, neither of us really has much to base this off of. So it's basically doing the best that we can with what we have. So
Rock. Yeah, we got a lot of interesting movies planned for this year.
yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I enjoyed this one. I mean, this isn't a film that I would really go back and watch again very often or anything like that. I could see myself maybe watching it one or two more times, like maybe watching it with my kids when they're older or
Yeah.
something like that. But
Yeah, it was one of those I'm happy that I watched because I've always been intrigued by it. I don't know how many times I'll watch it again, maybe just for something to be in the background.
yeah.
Um, so the movies we had planned for the month, I put them in order of release.
Yep.
So we started with the 20s. We're going to move on to a couple movies in the 30s. The first one we have up is kind of interesting. It was something they did different in the 30s. Instead of dubbing early like talkies over in a different language, they shot 2 different movies to have 2 different languages. So we're going to be doing the Spanish version of Dracula. So back then, movies had like all the same sets, but different actors.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot about this movie, and actually heard it's better than the English version.
Huh. That's
Yeah,
cool.
so I've been really interested in that ever since I saw it pop up on Cinemassacre Monster Madness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really interested in getting into that. So we'll be talking about Spanish Dracula next week, or not next week, I guess, in the next episode.
Yeah. Because this is the October special.
Yeah,
So
and there's definitely not 12 weeks in October. There'd be a lot of horror movies for me to watch. But yeah. So next time we talk about Spanish Dracula. Stop by for that, and until then, as always, be kind and rewind.